I need $40,000, just to cover the lawyers, my sister said like she was asking for a cup of sugar. I stood there, clutching my coffee, realizing if I say no, I become the family villain. If I say yes, I lose everything I've scraped together for a home of my own. I said no, and that's when the real betrayal began. Look, I just need $40,000, just to close out the attorneys, that's it. She said it like she was asking for a ride to the airport. Casual, expectant. I froze. The coffee cup in my hand trembled slightly, and I had to set it down before it spilled. My sister Megan stood in my kitchen like it was still her safe space, like nothing had happened. $40,000? I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. Yes, she said, stepping forward, brushing a strand of her perfect blonde hair behind her ear. Just until the settlement goes through. I stared at her. That was my down payment. My dream of finally owning a place that no one could take from me. She knew that. I'd spent years renting, saving, skipping vacations, brown bagging lunch for a decade, all of it for that future. And you're asking me to just give it to you? She flinched, just slightly. It's not like that. You know what I'm dealing with. The prenup was brutal, and honestly, I didn't think he'd enforce it. You cheated, Megan. My voice was still quiet, still calm, but now I could hear the weight in it. You broke the terms. You knew what it meant. She looked away. We were falling apart long before that. It wasn't... No, I cut in. You don't get to rewrite it. He's not perfect, but you signed that paper. You chose this. The silence that followed cracked something inside me. She had always been the one they defended. When we were kids and I said no, I didn't want to share my birthday gift. No, I didn't want her borrowing my clothes without asking. I was difficult, cold, unhelpful. I remembered Dad standing in the hallway the first time I refused to do Megan's science project in high school, his voice low but sharp. She's sensitive. You've always been the strong one. Strong. The word always felt like a sentence, not a compliment. Now here she was, crying in front of me like that word didn't mean anything. 2 days later, Mom and Dad showed up. Dad didn't sit, just stood by the window, arms folded like a judge in his robe. Mom brought a pie. She always brought a pie when she needed something. Sweetheart, she said, gently pushing the pie toward me across the table. Your sister's going through the hardest time of her life. She made choices, I said. Don't we all? She replied, softening her voice like I was a child refusing to share my toys. Dad chimed in. It's just money. You'll make more. But Megan, she's fighting for her future. I laughed. I actually laughed. She's fighting to avoid the consequences of cheating on her husband and blowing up her marriage. And now I'm supposed to bankroll the cleanup? Mom's tone sharpened. Don't be cruel. No, I said. I'm being clear. They didn't get it, or maybe they did, and that was worse. Because then the guilt wasn't accidental, it was tactical. The calls started the next day. My cousin Jenny. I don't want to take sides, but she's your sister. My aunt crying. Your mom's so upset, can't you just help and be done with it? Even Megan's voice on a voicemail. I guess I just expected more from you. I never thought you'd turn your back on me like this. Every word stacked like bricks on my chest. And yet, somewhere in the pressure, in the silence after I hung up on yet another call, I found something I hadn't felt in years. Resolve. Tonight, after the latest visit, this time from Mom, who stood in the doorway saying I'd regret this for the rest of my life. I closed the door behind her and stood in the middle of my apartment. No voices, no questions. Just me. I turned off my phone. I opened the box in my closet, the one with the banking records I hadn't dared to look at in weeks, afraid I might give in. I placed the keys to the new condo on the table beside it. Then, on instinct, I pulled out the old family album from the shelf, the one with the torn spine and missing pages. It had been broken for years, long before the divorce, long before the money. I sat down on the floor. For the first time in my life, I let the silence wrap around me. Not as punishment, but as peace. I'm the villain now, the selfish sister, the one who said no. But for the first time in my life, I feel like myself. The next morning I woke to 7 missed calls, 4 from Mom, 2 from Megan, 1 from a number I didn't recognize but knew exactly who it was, Dad. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I made oatmeal, turned on the kettle, and stared at the wall while the water boiled. I hadn't slept much. There was a tightness in my chest, like I'd swallowed a stone. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mom. "You're tearing this family apart." Just 5 words, but I felt every one of them like a slap. Then came the guilt chorus. "She's your sister. You've always been stronger. Money comes and goes, but blood is forever." That last one came from my aunt, of all people. She hadn't spoken to me in years. Suddenly, everyone was an expert on sacrifice, as long as it was mine. I spent the day ignoring them, but that night they came in person. Mom, Dad, and Megan, standing in my doorway like an intervention. Dad didn't even wait to be invited in. "She's desperate," he said, his voice low and controlled. "And you're her only hope." Megan stood behind him, arms crossed, eyes rimmed red but dry now. Her lips pressed together like she was holding back either a scream or a smirk. Mom sat down uninvited. "This is bigger than a house, honey." "No," I said. "It's exactly about a house. It's about what I've built." "You've always had more," Megan said, finally speaking. "Ever since we were kids. You always got the grades, the job, the approval. This is the first time I've asked for anything." I blinked. That was her version of the past? The version where I was the golden child? I wanted to laugh, but my throat was too tight. "You didn't ask," I said. "You expected, like it was owed." Dad stepped forward. "Don't throw this family away over money." That's when something snapped. Not loudly, not with fire. Just a clean, silent break inside me. I walked over to the small bookshelf by the window and pulled out the family photo album. The one with the cracked spine and torn-out pages from years ago, after one of their fights. I held it up. "This broke a long time ago," I said. No one spoke. Not even Megan. They left eventually, Dad muttering something about cold-heartedness. Mom crying. Megan silent. When the door shut, I locked it. Not just the deadbolt, the chain too. Then I sat down on the floor with my untouched oatmeal and stared at the keys to my new condo on the table. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. And still, somehow I breathed easier than I had in years. Let them call me the villain. The selfish one. The ungrateful daughter. I'm not giving them what they want. And I'm not giving up what I've earned. Not this time. They escalated. The next day, my cousin Julia posted a vague, guilt-laced rant on Facebook. "Some people care more about their bank accounts than their own blood. Disgusting." Megan liked it. Mom commented 3 heart emojis. Subtlety was never their strength. By noon, 2 co-workers had asked if everything was okay. That's when I realized I wasn't just the black sheep anymore. I was the family's public enemy #1. And it wasn't just online. I came home to find an envelope shoved under my door. Inside, photocopies of Megan's legal bills, all neatly itemized. No note, just numbers. Cold, sterile numbers totaling $41,372.08. The message was obvious. This isn't drama, it's math. Solve it. That night, I got a voicemail from Megan's lawyer. "We understand there may be potential for informal family support to alleviate legal burdens." She'd given them my number. She'd actually dragged me into her legal mess without consent. I hung up before the message ended and felt something strange, shaking. I wasn't sure if it was rage or fear. Maybe both. I grabbed the box, the one in the closet, the one I hadn't opened since the bank pre-approved me last fall. Inside, years of statements, budgets scribbled in the margins, printouts of mortgage calculators. I ran my fingers over the paperwork like it was something sacred. They wanted to rip this from me. Not just the money, the years of sacrifice, the quiet, exhausting work of building a future when no one helped. 2 days later, my father showed up again. He didn't knock. He just stood outside the building and called until I finally buzzed him in. He walked in like he owned the place, like he'd raised me in this apartment, not just judged me from afar. "You don't have to give her the full amount," he said, skipping pleasantries. "Even 10 grand would help. Something to show you care." "I do care," I said. "That's why I'm not rewarding betrayal." He shook his head slowly, disappointed, like a teacher watching a failing student. "This isn't about punishment. It's about love." No, it was about control. It always had been. I told him I wasn't changing my mind, that if Megan needed help, she should sell her car, or ask the man she cheated with. He stood there for a moment, staring. Then he took a step closer and dropped his voice. "You're making a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life." That line, the same one Mom used, like they practiced it. After he left, I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark. The apartment felt smaller, the walls closer. I hadn't cried yet. But now, with no one watching, I finally did. Not out of guilt, out of grief. because I was starting to see the truth. I wasn't losing my family. I never had them to begin with. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first real freedom I'd ever known. I didn't answer the door this time. They knocked for 10 minutes, first politely, then rhythmically, then with that annoyed insistence that made it clear they thought I owed them an audience. I sat motionless on the couch, phone in hand, volume off, staring at the front door like it might explode inward. Eventually, I heard my mother's voice through the wood, low, theatrical. "You're breaking her heart, and mine." I wanted to yell back, "Whose heart broke when you told me I was selfish for not giving up my future?" But I didn't. Silence was louder. When they finally left, I opened the door just a crack. A small note was taped there. "We're not giving up on you." It read like a love letter. It felt like a threat. The next day, Megan went nuclear. She posted on Instagram a photo of her holding a stack of legal documents captioned, "When your own sister turns her back on you during the worst time of your life, you learn who really cares. But I'm still standing. For my daughter. For myself." Comments poured in. "She did what to you?" "Some people only love with conditions. You're better off without toxic family." Megan was framing herself as the abandoned mother, the betrayed woman. I was cast as the cold-hearted villain with a savings account and no soul. Then came the DMs, some from distant relatives, one from a girl we went to high school with who used to copy my homework and hadn't spoken to me in over a decade. "You should be ashamed." I blocked them all. But blocking doesn't fix betrayal. It just turns down the volume. That weekend was supposed to be my first open house visit. A cozy 2-bedroom near the park, brick outside, sunlight in the kitchen. I canceled the appointment. I told the realtor I had a scheduling conflict. The real conflict was internal. How do you walk into your dream when everyone who claims to love you is clawing at your ankles, calling it betrayal? Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with the box open again. Bank statements fanned out like tarot cards. My future, printed in black ink, waiting to be sacrificed for a peace that would never last. I closed the lid. Not today. Maybe not ever. That night I made pasta for one. The sauce burned a little while I muted another incoming call. I ate in silence, legs tucked up, watching the city lights blink through my window like distant warnings. I knew what they wanted. For me to fold. To cave. To prove again that I'd carry the burden so they wouldn't have to. But I also knew something else now. Something terrifying. Something freeing. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's possession. And I was done being owned. Monday morning started with a voicemail from Megan's lawyer again. I deleted it without listening. The second one came from Mom. "You know she could lose everything, right? Her house? Her custody?" There it was. The pivot from guilt to fear. If shame wouldn't break me, maybe terror would. By lunch, the fear campaign was in full swing. Uncle Martin texted me a Bible verse. Cousin Leah sent a long message that ended with, "God sees your heart." I wanted to respond, "Good. Then he knows how tired it is." That night, they came to my building again. This time, Megan was with them. I didn't open the door, but I watched through the peephole. She looked tired. Not worn out tired, performed tired. Her eyes darted around like she was afraid someone might see her being the victim. She raised her voice. "This is your last chance to make it right." Right. Funny how right always meant surrender. When I didn't answer, she tried the guilt grenade. "I would have done it for you." She wouldn't have, and we both knew it. That night I sat with the keys to the condo again, ran my thumb over the metal until it pressed a line into my skin. I whispered to the silence, "You're not taking this from me." And the silence, for once, felt like an ally. The next day was worse. My dad called from a different number. I answered before I realized it was him. "You need to fix this," he snapped. No hello, no breath. "I didn't break it," I said. He paused. "You're acting like you don't care about this family." I laughed, dry and bitter. "I care. I just won't be your insurance policy anymore. You think standing alone makes you strong? It makes you bitter." Click. I didn't let him finish. I stood in the middle of my living room, heart racing, and tried not to cry. Not from sadness. From the weight of choosing myself over people who would never choose me. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I went to the open house, same place I canceled on before. The agent smiled, handed me a brochure, talked about square footage and tax brackets. I nodded, smiled, pretended I was there to buy a home. But really, I was there to prove something. That I could still dream, even if I had to dream alone. And as I walked room to room, hardwood floors, white walls, tiny scuffs near the baseboards, I imagined furniture, warm lights, a quiet life where no one banged on the door demanding sacrifice. A life that belonged entirely to me. I didn't make an offer. Not yet. But for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to picture it without guilt. They could keep calling me cold, selfish, ungrateful. I wasn't theirs anymore. The silence didn't last. Wednesday morning, I woke to a group text from Mom, me, Megan, and 2 of our aunts. Mom, we need to have a civil conversation. This is a family matter, not a war zone. Aunt Carol, no one's attacking you. We just want peace. Megan, you left me no choice. No choice. That phrase stuck to me like smoke. As if I'd forced her hand. As if this avalanche was something I triggered. Not her cheating, not her desperation, not her refusal to face the consequences of her own life. They wanted a meeting. An intervention, basically. I didn't respond. Not out of defiance, but because I knew exactly what they'd say. I could hear it already. You're being dramatic. Just give a little, show compassion. You're not a bad person, just stubborn. No one would ask how it felt to be ganged up on. To be made the villain for choosing not to bleed on command. They came anyway. I didn't let them inside this time. I met them in the lobby, Mom, Dad, and Megan, shoulder to shoulder like a firing squad. You don't even look like yourself, Mom said, eyes scanning me like I was diseased. I'm tired, I said. Because I'm being emotionally mugged by my own family. Dad's voice cut in, smooth but sharp. You've always had this cold streak. I hoped it was just a phase. I wanted to scream. You threw that word at me my whole life and called it a personality flaw. It was protection. From this. Megan stepped forward. Her voice was lower, more careful. I know I messed up. But I'm still your sister. I didn't stop being your sister when you made your choices, I said. You stopped treating me like one when you decided my savings were your safety net. Silence. Then Dad delivered the dagger. If you walk away from this, don't expect us to be there when you fall. I looked each of them in the eye. I've already fallen. Plenty of times. I just never expected my own family to be the ones pushing. I turned around, walked back upstairs without looking back. My knees shook the whole way up, but I didn't stop. Back in my apartment, I collapsed onto the floor. The quiet was deafening. It didn't feel like peace this time. It felt like a funeral. Something had died. But it wasn't me. It was the version of me who would have said yes. The version who bent until she splintered. The good daughter. The reliable fallback. She was gone. And the woman who stayed behind? She was hurting, but she was free. Thursday came with a surprise. My boss called me into her office. She closed the door gently, then gave me that look, the one that says I'm about to ask a question I have no business asking. I don't mean to pry, she started, but is everything okay at home? I blinked. Why? There's been talk. Someone called reception asking to confirm your employment. They mentioned you were under emotional distress and might be making unstable decisions. I felt my blood drain. I already knew. Who called? I asked. She hesitated. They didn't give a name. They said they were family. Megan. Of course it was Megan. She couldn't shake money out of me, so now she was coming for the one thing left I hadn't protected well enough. My reputation. My livelihood. My boss reassured me they hadn't taken it seriously, that these things happen. But the damage was already done. She saw me differently now. Not as dependable, as volatile. Megan hadn't just tried to ruin my finances. She was trying to ruin me. That night, I went through old papers again. Not the bank records this time. Letters. Old birthday cards from Mom with careful handwriting. So proud of you, sweet girl. Notes from Megan in college. I don't say this enough, but you inspire me. All of it felt like another language now. One I no longer understood. It's wild how love can feel like a memory you made up. How quickly it curdles when you stop being useful. I gathered the cards into a box, sealed it shut, and labeled it in black Sharpie. Archive. Not evidence. Because I wasn't going to use their past words to forgive their present damage. I was just done rereading them. Then I walked around my apartment, turning off lights, locking windows, checking doors. Rituals I used to do for safety. Now they felt like armor. Not from strangers. From people who used to call themselves mine. Later, I got a text from Megan. If you think you can cut us all off and still sleep at night, good luck. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the condo listing again, the one I couldn't get out of my head. I emailed the agent, asked if it was still available. It was. I told her I wanted to come back for a second look, alone this time. No noise, no guilt, just me, and the walls I might one day finally call mine. Then I poured a glass of wine, sat cross-legged on the floor with the blueprints in my lap, and let myself dream for 20 uninterrupted minutes. For the first time in weeks, I felt the smallest flicker of something strange. Hope, steady, unapologetic, mine. I showed up to the second viewing early. The agent wasn't there yet, so I waited in my car, staring at the building's facade. It wasn't flashy, just a clean brick exterior, modest landscaping, a wind chime someone had hung on the third floor that clinked softly in the breeze. It felt quiet. That's what I wanted, not luxury, not a view, just quiet. When the agent arrived, I walked through every room slowly this time. I touched the walls, opened every cabinet, ran my hand along the kitchen counter and pictured slicing apples there alone, with no one calling me ungrateful or cold. "You seem more settled than last time," the agent said. "I am," I replied. "I just had to bury a few ghosts first." We stood in the living room a moment longer, the kind of silence that felt full, not awkward. She handed me a new info sheet with updated figures. I held it in my hands like a relic. It wasn't just a place. It was proof that I could still choose something just for me. That night, I clicked save on the listing one more time, but didn't email. I wasn't ready to commit, but I wasn't letting it go either. That home had become a symbol now, of everything I wouldn't surrender. My phone buzzed as I set it down. Voicemail from Dad. I almost didn't listen, but something in me, the last flicker of the daughter I used to be, hit play. His voice was tired, slower than usual. No anger, no blame. "I don't know how it got this far," he said, "but we're still your family. And when you're ready to come back, we'll be here. Come back." As if exile had been my idea. As if I had walked out of the fire, not been shoved. I deleted the voicemail. Not out of spite, out of clarity. I wasn't returning to anything. I was finally arriving somewhere else. Friday, I ran into an old friend I hadn't seen in years. We grabbed coffee, caught up. She asked about Megan, about my parents, if we still talked. I didn't lie. I didn't explain. "We're not close," I said simply. She nodded. Sometimes that's healthier. It struck me how easily she accepted it. No speeches, no guilt. "No, but she's your sister." For the first time in weeks, I talked about work, books, music, things that had nothing to do with being betrayed. I laughed without feeling like I had to apologize for it. And when we hugged goodbye, she said, "You look lighter." I hadn't realized how much weight I'd been dragging until someone else noticed it was gone. Later that evening, I did something I hadn't done since it all began. I lit a candle, sat at my dining table, and ate dinner, real dinner. Not cereal over the sink, not takeout eaten on the couch with the TV screaming. Just me, a plate of pasta, a glass of wine, and silence. It didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. Every bite tasted like something I couldn't name, but deeply understood. Not happiness, not victory. Something quieter, heavier, peace. Saturday morning, I woke up without dread. No texts, no voicemails, no knocks at the door. For the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a boundary finally being respected. Whether out of exhaustion or strategy, I didn't care. I walked to the coffee shop around the corner, the one I'd been avoiding ever since Megan's drama made even public spaces feel like hostile territory. The barista remembered my order, asked where I'd been. "Just taking a break," I said. It felt true. Not from coffee. From being available for everyone else's chaos. I took my drink to the park and sat by the duck pond. Kids were yelling, leaves were falling, dogs were barking, and somehow, all of it blended into this background hum of life moving on. And for once, I was moving with it. When I got home, there was a letter in the mailbox. Not an email, not a text. An actual letter in Megan's handwriting. No return address. I opened it at the kitchen counter, hands steady. Inside were 3 pages, folded neatly. The tone was off. Not quite apologetic, not quite bitter, something in between. She said she was sorry I felt attacked, that she never meant for things to spiral the way they did, that she was just trying to survive and felt cornered, that maybe she went too far. Then came the pivot I expected. "I still think family should help each other, especially when one of us is struggling." I hope you can find it in your heart to understand that. No mention of the lawyer calls, or the smears, or the way she tried to make my job unstable. Just vague remorse, and a gentle but unmistakable invitation back into the cycle. I read it twice, then slid it into the same box where I'd kept the birthday cards. No reply. I made myself a cup of tea and stood in the kitchen while the kettle hissed, trying to find even a flicker of emotion. Anger, sadness, nostalgia. But there was nothing, just stillness, and a strange kind of mercy. Later that evening, I emailed the real estate agent. "I want to make an offer," I wrote. "Let's talk next steps." I didn't tell anyone. I didn't post about it. I didn't call a friend. I just sat on the couch afterward and let it sink in, that I was doing something big, something real. For me. Without asking permission. Without bracing for impact. I looked at my reflection in the darkened window. For the first time, I saw someone I trusted. She looked tired, but clear-eyed. Like a woman who'd walked through a fire she hadn't started and still came out clean. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt whole, and I was finally ready to stop surviving and start living. The offer went through. The papers were signed on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. No champagne, no witnesses. Just me, a pen, and a tremble in my hand I didn't try to hide. When it was done, I walked out of the office into sunlight so sharp it felt like a reset. The world didn't celebrate, didn't pause, but something inside me did. For the first time in my adult life, I had something that couldn't be retracted by guilt or shame. Something entirely mine. The condo key felt small in my palm, but heavier than anything I'd ever held. The move was slow and careful. No hired movers. Just me, a few boxes, and deliberate silence. I didn't want noise. I didn't want help. I didn't want anyone else's fingerprints on this part of my story. The first night, I sat on the floor of the empty living room, surrounded by stacked boxes and echoes. I ate cold pizza straight from the box, stared at the blank walls, and felt more grounded than I ever had in a fully furnished apartment. No family photos on shelves, no birthday cards taped to the fridge, just blank space, waiting to be filled on my own terms. I slept on a mattress on the floor, curled in a blanket that still smelled like my old place. I expected to feel sad. I didn't. I felt clean, untouched, unburdened. A week passed, then 2. No word from Megan, no sudden appearances, no cryptic texts, no voicemail landmines. Maybe she finally realized I wasn't bending, or maybe she'd just moved on to someone else who would. I didn't care. Indifference was its own kind of peace. One morning I found myself standing in the middle of my new kitchen, holding a mug of coffee, staring out the window. It hit me how quiet the place was. Not dead silence, living silence. The kind that's full of your own breath, your own decisions. The kind that reminds you no one is lurking behind your choices anymore. I breathed in and whispered out loud, just to hear it. "I'm not the villain." It came out steadier than I thought it would. I repeated it. "I'm not the villain." Let them say what they want. Let them spin stories. They had pushed me to the edge thinking I'd crumble. Instead, I built a ledge, and then a wall, and then a home. I am the woman who said no, and that's the most honest thing I've ever done. Let them make me an outcast. Let them erase me from the family photos. Let them tell their version. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not chasing anyone's version of love. I'm living my own. Let them call me selfish. I call it finally being free.